Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is our Year of the Heart, and this is going to be another entry through Brené Brown's new book, Atlas of the Heart, where we are talking about the emotions that come up when various things happen. And today's entry is chapter number 4, and it is the places we go when it's beyond us. And this is not like where we talked about being overwhelmed and stressed and like we can't take it anymore. This is when something amazing happens and it's just a moment that takes us outside of ourselves. Now, what could happen? Like when I think about this, I think of like looking up at the sky and seeing the stars at night and just thinking about the fact that we're on this spinning disk that's, orbiting with other planets and around this big sun. And where would that take me? It would probably take me to a point of thinking about what the larger experience of life and my existence would be, right? So it's things like awe and wonder. There could be something in confusion with a situation, not necessarily that example that I gave, but if something amazing happened and you might be confused by it, you might get curious about it, and you might have interest about it, which I think is an interesting part of this chapter, where she designates the difference between the curiosity and interest. And you could also be surprised. What about you guys? Do you like to be surprised or not? I know sometimes people don't like to be surprised. So she starts out with awe and wonder. Don't they sort of seem like the same thing? Although wonder maybe is a little closer to curiosity, I suppose, right? So she says both awe and wonder are often experienced in response to nature, art, music, spiritual experiences, or ideas. In the midst of these moments, we can feel overwhelmed by the vastness of something that is almost incomprehensible. So that would be like the example that I gave where I'm thinking about looking up at the stars and some things that we may never know until we are no longer on this planet. It almost feels like what we're witnessing can't be true, she says. Like we're seeing something that doesn't fit with how we move through and understand our everyday lives. That makes sense because on a moment-to-moment basis, you're not probably thinking about the fact that we're on a planet and questioning how it's, hanging in the universe and all that, right? So I can understand that. So what does she say is the difference here? So wonder fuels our passion for exploration and learning, for curiosity and adventure. Yeah, because she'll talk about curiosity later. And then how researchers will say something about awe is, awe-inspiring events and the experiences that leave us filled with wonder often make us feel small compared to our expansive universe. Small but connected to each other and in a larger sense of itself. So that would be like, I guess the difference would be that wonder might want you to think more about it and to have this, like she mentioned, adventure, like thinking about like, wow, I wonder if someday I'll get to go up to Mars or something like that. But then awe is like wonder, except that it also has maybe like a spiritual element of it, if you can read between the lines there, where you are realizing that you are a part of this amazing thing that you're witnessing that is like beyond you, but you're realizing like, wow, I'm actually a little speck of dust on this little planet that's in this huge universe. I like how she has this drawing here, and I don't know who the artist is, but so one side is awe and the other side is wonder. So you can see how awe in the bottom there, he is definitely feeling like, oh, I'm a sense of this wonder, or yeah, for lack of a better word, I shouldn't have said wonder, but you know what I mean. I'm a part of this magic or whatever. And then you can see on the other side where she is looking at the butterflies, and then she's like, wow, I wonder what it would be like to fly. And then in the bottom one, she's reading about the butterflies. So the wonder part of it caused her to want to explore more. Whereas the awe experience was almost just like It was just an amazing experience, and you were sort of taking it all in. So I mentioned that you could maybe be confused by something. I don't think like the stars is a good example, but the concept of confusion is key to understanding why, wait, hold on. The concept of confusion, there's a key to understanding it, and that it's good for us. And it's categorized as an epistemic emotion. It's an emotion that critical to knowledge and learning. So that makes sense. If you don't understand something and you really have this sense of wanting to understand it, then you will go and learn, right? So in the case of the wonder picture of the girl with the butterfly, she might be curious and maybe she's confused. Like, I wonder why they land on those types of flowers and not those. So it also is a part of that wonder, and it causes her to learn more. How often do we observe people and ourselves dismissing new data or information that challenges our ideas in order to avoid confusion or the risk of being wrong? Yeah, I could see that. If you ask me to stop thinking, engaging in careful deliberation, and revisiting old thinking, I'm sorry, I'm like way all over the sentence here because I looked away for a second. So what she's getting at here anyway about confusion is that there can be a discomfort to it. And some people avoid it. Some people are like, well, I don't really want to contemplate how the universe came to be or how it's existing and the larger things like that, because they might find it confusing and they don't want to have that discomfort around it. But if it weren't for discomfort, then there wouldn't have been things that were discovered and people wouldn't look into more things, right? And that brings us to curiosity. And I said that this part really intrigued me because I do think of interest and curiosity to be similar. But I think that, and there isn't a picture for this one like there was with the wonder and the awe, but there is a difference. So let's start by looking at some of the examples of how we use these words. Brené says, we often say things like, I want my kids to be curious and to show interest. I'm looking for employees who are curious and demonstrate interest in our work. I value curiosity in a person. They show interest in the topic. So she says, what starts to take shape as we look at how we talk about these terms is the difference between thinking and feeling. So which one did you think had more thinking and which one had more feeling? I would say curiosity had more feeling, right? Here's what emerged from their data, she says. Curiosity seems to be both a trait and a state. You can be a curious person, and regardless of having this trait or not, you can feel curious about something. Interested is more of just a state. So interested is not who we are, but how we are at a specific time. So curiosity, I was right. Curiosity seems to involve both feeling, emotion, and thinking, cognition, while interest is really just more about thinking. So if we think about the one right before this, the confusion, maybe confusion would lead to curiosity because you might not like that feeling of confusion. So then you think, well, I'm going to get curious about this and I'm going to try to get to the bottom of whatever it is that's causing you confusion. What's important is that these two definitions mean that we have to come to some level of knowledge or awareness before we can become curious. Okay, so then I guess you couldn't go from confusion right to curious. You'd have to have some kind of knowledge, I guess. We aren't curious about something that we are unaware of or know nothing about. Okay. To introduce curiosity about a particular topic, it may be necessary to prime the pump or to use intriguing information to get folks interested so that they become more curious and create opportunities for exposure to new ideas and experience. Curiosity doesn't exist without interest, but we can be interested and not have our interest grow into curiosity. So maybe curiosity is a little more fun. Interest seems more scientific. I'd rather be curious about something. But what does it mean? Does it mean that there's the same level of action from both of those things? Choosing to be curious is choosing to be vulnerable because it requires us to surrender to uncertainty. So that is like the confusion would be similar to uncertainty, I suppose. We have to ask questions, admit to not knowing, risk being told that we shouldn't be asking, and sometimes make discoveries that lead to discomfort. There's that discomfort again. But again, don't they say that a lot of times growth doesn't happen without a little bit of discomfort and being outside of your comfort zone? What about surprise? There is a picture for surprise, and it's a birthday party when somebody shows up and is like, ah! And Brené shares in the chapter here that she does not like surprises. And it's to the point where she will not even go to a movie without really in-depth reading the plot so that because she doesn't want to be surprised by somebody dying or, she just wants to have a good idea of how it's going to go and not be caught off guard. What do you think about that? I actually think I'm the opposite. I mean, I don't necessarily like surprise parties, although I've enjoyed them. I'm not one of those people that's like, don't ever surprise me, because I kind of get excited when there's a surprise. And I think about my envelope project. I could have come up with those things myself, but part of the element of that whole project was that I liked the surprise of opening things and not knowing what it was. That's the same thing as gifts for Christmas or other holidays, where some people just can't stand it and they have to go and find the gifts. And there's just there's more of a less anxiety if they know ahead of time, okay, good, I'm getting that thing I'm wanting. I don't have to think about it every time I open a gift. But I like to be surprised. I don't know. I suppose we talked about disappointment in another chapter. I suppose there could be an element of, if you, say you read the whole story. I hate, thinking about movies again, I hate when I'm at the movies and they show a preview of a new movie that looks really good, but they show the whole thing in the preview. It's that disappoints me. I'd rather just see who's in it and have a couple of quick little scenes, like a teaser. And I don't want to see the entire movie in the preview, because then it you can kind of tell if somebody's going to fall in love, or they show the biggest parts usually. So there could be a detriment to not being surprised if you want to see how something evolves. I love, when I listen to my audiobooks, I just love mysteries. And I'm always trying to figure it out. And also, I love The Bachelor and The Bachelorette. I don't look at the spoilers, and I'm sure they have the whole thing solved. But I find the fun in trying to figure it out, or thinking about, ooh, I wonder what's going to happen, and who's he going to pick, and how's it going to go. And so I just get more delight out of wondering. And I think, I don't even know, it's not curiosity, but I think I've said this to you in another video, that even if I'm out somewhere and I see, a couple at the table, I'm sometimes watching them and I'm ooh, they might be on a date, and I'm making up this whole story in my head. So sometimes it's a little more fun for me to kind of live in that not knowing, but kind of anticipating or trying to see if you can figure something out. So I would say that I like surprises probably more than other people, especially more than Brené, because I would never read the whole description of a movie or the back of a book or something. I'm thinking of When Harry Met Sally, when Harry likes to read the very end of the book, but that was more just about, he was afraid if he died before the book was read, that he wouldn't know how it ended. But so that wasn't necessarily about the surprise part of it. But I wouldn't do that. I just want to be waiting until the very end. And maybe that's just because I'm also a curious person, and I like to sort of wonder about things. So Oh, and by the way, this chapter just like ended right where that picture was. And it had no, I mean, I was surprised by the ending of this chapter because there was no warning. All of a sudden it was like she was talking about surprise and there was no like wrap up anything to do with what had been talked about. So it just sort of ends and she says, well, okay, I'll read the part of this surprise because I did all the talking during that. But there's a strong relationship between surprise and unexpectedness. In fact, several of the definitions of surprise use the word unexpected. However, in our lived experience, we don't use the words synonymously. We normally use surprise for experiences that link quickly to an emotion, when we use the term unexpected that to an experience that starts with thinking, just like surprise, but it often stays cognitive rather than bridging to the emotion. So unexpected versus surprise. So yeah, I would think of like them saying like surprise at the party and you'd be like, ah, you know, you would definitely have an emotional reaction. But if it was something, it seems like unexpected would be a little more muted. You might say like, well, that was unexpected, you know, and just sort of not be like, that was unexpected. Like you would probably use a larger word than just unexpected, which is sort of mutable. So those are the places that we go, according to their research, when things are beyond us. What other places do you go, though? Because I was really thinking, like, I was surprised that this chapter ended, no pun intended, with the word surprise. But I was thinking that it almost can allow you to sort of go to another place in your mind and sort of imagine the possibilities. So I guess I'm surprised that imagination is not in this chapter. Or fantasy, even. Like, you might fantasize, like I was saying, looking up at the stars and fantasizing about going and living on another planet or something. So I guess maybe when I think about my own reactions to when things are just beyond me, they do make me curious, but I also feel like they sort of bring out like a childlike way of being. What about you guys? Tell me what you think. And let me see what the next chapter is, because I haven't looked ahead yet. The places we go when things aren't what they seem. So we already talked about when they don't go as planned. So maybe when things aren't what they seem, it could be like you'd be more than surprised. I'm just checking here. Oh, it looks more like it's a lighthearted thing, not like you were duped or something. So that'll be an interesting one to talk about as well. I'm glad you're there. Thanks for being here, and please say hello. I love your comments, and sorry I just haven't really done as much on this book so far, but there's only really a chapter to do per month, so I'm kind of on track as it is, because it's April and we just did chapter 4. All right, I will see you on the next video. Thanks. Bye.